Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd invite you to please take your seats and we'll get started on our next session in the Information Warfare Pavilion. I'm Commander Laura Steger. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for Naval Information Forces, and I'm pleased to introduce Captain Brian Braswell, who is the Commander of Naval Information Warfare Development Center, NIWDC. Captain Braswell he graduated, from the University of Virginia in 1993. He previously served as Commanding Officer of Naval Computer and Telecommunications Area Master Station Pacific, or NICTAMS PAC, and his most recent fleet assignment was as Information Warfare Commander for the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group 10, including a 7-month Mediterranean Sea and Arabian Gulf deployment in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Braswell.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, from the coveted last speaker slot of the second day of the conference. A couple things I'd like to say up front. Today's Valentine's Day, right? So I was trading texts with my wife this morning, and she knew I was speaking this afternoon. She said, "What time are you speaking?" So I told her, and she said, "Good luck. Don't forget to speak slowly," because I do forget to speak slowly. So I'll get excited, and because I'm passionate about this. I will tell you that right up front, then I will not be able to deliver the level of enthusiasm that my good friend Admiral Hines delivered yesterday, if you heard her talk about Space Command. But I promise you that I'm passionate about the mission of NIWDC and about the people and about the team of NIWDC. I'm going to try to split the sweet spot here today between talking to you enough about NIWDC missions and kind of where we are and where we're going, and yet allowing plenty of time for questions and answer at the end. It's also not lost on me that we are now 10 minutes away from the start of the reception, read happy hour, and so I've already had a couple of people threaten to bring their cocktails over to watch me finish up over here. So look, I do have passion for the mission, and I'll kind of step through what I think are the big rocks, if you will, of NIWDC mission. And I'll also talk some about the collaborative relationships we have with our stakeholders on both the training and the warfighting continuums. If you'll recall, NIWDC was established as a command in 2017. So really, in the 7th, 8th year of our existence. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the things we've instantiated since then. So mission-wise, training the fleet in IW tactics and applications, developing fleet IW professionals, also known as force development, to include the Navy's information warfare tactics instructors, supporting fleet experimentation, developing doctrine and tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, for the application of IW capabilities, and maintaining the Navy's electronic warfare library for use in the surface force and on other platforms. If you break that down, training, doctrine, TTP development, and live virtual constructive would perhaps be a subset of that, and you'll hear me talk about live virtual constructive. And then I'll finish talking about Task Force Station Hypo, and then talk a little bit about, the year ahead. We're still pretty early in 2024, so I still consider it on the year ahead. So first, I'll start with training. And I know Ms. Nashold earlier today talked extensively about training in her remarks this morning from the Nav I4 perspective. So we, NIWDC, train across the spectrum of the Optimized Fleet Response Plan, or OFRP, and that goes from basic phase all the way to advanced phase, where we have other partners in that space. Information Warfare Training Group, or IWTG, is a subordinate command to NIWDC, and they, as you heard this morning, have assumed all responsibilities for IW basic phase training. So that command, IWTG, is one part of the training continuum across the OFRP. And they train across all IW missions. We provide intermediate and advanced training to the IW fleet in close partnership with Strike Group 4 on the East Coast, Strike Group 15 on this coast, and then Tactical Training Group Atlantic and Tactical Training Group Pacific. So as you get to the far right of the OFRP training continuum, it's very much a team sport. And I'm thankful as NIWDC to enjoy great partnership with those organizations also involved in the training game. And I didn't mention my fellow warfighting development centers here, but I will circle back to talk about some of those relationships and some of the places where we work very closely with them. I previously mentioned 2017 as our stand-up, and our implicit focus, I think, not explicit but implicit focus, was on developing the nucleus of the Naval Information Warfare Advanced Warfighting School, or NIWDC, our IW weapons school, and getting started to producing credible warfare tactics instructors, WTIs. So as NIWDC matured, and we actually instantiated that repeatable WTI education process, our focus shifted to broader development of the IW force in general. As a means to that end, we teach the prospective IWC course several times a year. We have instantiated continuing education courses focused on very specific IW mission sets designed to be delivered to the individual unit level as well as carry strike groups and ARGs. Basically, the outcomes from the basic phase help drive our focus areas and those things. And again, Ms. Nashold, alluded to those training opportunities today. Those are all new within the last year, so those are new starts for us as we've looked at the outcomes from the basic phase and looked at where we can improve. And that's going to be a little different, ARG to ARG, or strike group to strike group, or unit to unit. And so we're able to focus that. And the focus of those efforts really is development of a highly capable IW cadre of sailors across the fleet, ready for deployment, regardless of operating area. Sailors that are ready to apply our information capabilities to maximize lethality. One particular subset I'll circle back to are our WTIs. We stood up the command in 2017, as I said, and then in 2018 is when we really started producing WTIs. Even though the weapons school didn't really formally have the bones, if you will, and we formally stood that up in the fall of 2022. To date, we've generated 213 WTIs in the fleet, to include 9 Marine Corps officers and 1 Coast Guardsman. So really the spirit of the tri-service maritime strategy. And we love welcoming our Marine Corps and Coast Guard partners into the class. And I hope to see that grow as we're able to grow out capacity in the weapons school and what we're able to produce. And I'll talk about that toward the very end as I talk about looking ahead to where NIWDC's headed. So those WTIs bring deep expertise to key organizations across the Navy and to the Joint Force. So we produce these humans that we've spent a lot of time and energy on training to an advanced level in information warfare, and then primarily we want them to go to a Strike Group 4, a 15, a TAC Trade Group LANT, or a TAC Trade Group PAC to be able to spread that knowledge to the fleet. But as they mature and grow and look at assignments beyond initial production, if you will, of that talent set, they go to joint staffs, they go to combatant commander staffs. So they go to planning events, and so their ability to bring that background and expertise, not only from their time in the fleet, but with their patch as a WTI, and bring that to the Joint Force. So LBC, it's critical to the training and development cycle, and also for innovating with respect to doctrine and to doctrine development, and I'm going to circle back on that one a little bit more later. So here we'll talk about a challenge that I routinely talk about, and that is the Navy and the DoD and industry are delivering capability to the fleet in the information warfare realm that it is very difficult for the Navy's training infrastructure to keep pace with. And so that's a challenge that I look at from the basic phase all the way to the advanced phase, because if it's not in a classroom, as those sailors are going through A or C schools or officer NDOC courses, then it's incumbent upon either IWTG or NAUTIC or IW professionals at CSG 415 or other training organizations to really bring those folks up to speed. So this is a challenge that I articulate to you that we struggle with, and I'm always interested in any new and interesting ideas to attack that. Another key NIWDC mission is doctrine and TTP development, innovation, and experimentation. Those are all kind of bundled together. I believe you've seen, as reflected in other remarks here over the last several days and in some of the panel discussions over the last several days, the broad scope of capability that the Navy and industry are delivering to the fleet. That comes with information on how do we use the gear, but I think that's subtly different from how do we apply the gear, especially applying all the gear and the capability in an integrated fashion in combat. And so we have to fully determine how to fully employ those things in concert with the full range of Navy and joint capability at our disposal to maximum effect in combat. We do that in near real time, as demonstrated through recent events in the Red Sea. And I know Ms. Nashhold several times in her remarks touched on our ability to rapidly learn from that. And I also noted there was an article out yesterday based on discussions from yesterday. As we talked about, we have internalized that and used that to rapidly learn in the fleet from a NIWDC perspective. So we can really rapidly understand the performance of our IW systems forward and update the TTP that we're employed and that we will be employing in the future to better posture those forces to respond to threats. So I'll pause here again to say we don't do this by ourselves. I said I would mention our partnerships with the other warfighting development centers, and that's absolutely critical. I enjoy great relationships with NAUTIC and SMIDC. A lot of touch points with the surface force, as you would imagine, in SMIDC. So our partnership is shown in ways like SWAT, Surface Warfare Advanced Tactics and Training. I try to provide one WTI or SME, depending what the need is, for every SWAT evolution, for every ship in a SWAT evolution. In 2023, I was 92% successful, so I'm not where I want to be. And I also don't consider 100% one IWWTI per ship in SWAT as success. Then I think it becomes more nuanced as we look at the various specialization areas of those WTIs. We're also exploring what more we can do in group sale and other opportunities in their intermediate and advanced phase. And then I mentioned NAUTIC as well. Lots of deep partnership with them on persistent targeting and how the Navy intends to execute long-range fires. And we also enjoy a deep partnership with NIWDC, the Naval Warfare Development Center, on doctrine and innovation and experimentation. They own the Fleet Experimentation Plan every year, and so we play a key role in supporting them and all the experimentation efforts they participate across the globe every year. From a doctrine perspective, every year NIWDC asks all the warfighting development centers to think through what they expect to do in the coming year. That happens late in the calendar year. And so this year at NIWDC, we've set a pretty aggressive schedule for the number of the amount of doctrine that is new that we will generate, and then the doctrine that is becoming stale and that we must update. So I'm trying to hold myself to a pretty high standard there as far as getting doctrine updated and or developed and out the door rapidly. So we talked about the training, doctrine, force development, and in my mind this all comes together in a very cyclical fashion of deeply understanding advanced IW capabilities that are getting delivered to the Navy, developing the TTP for the application of those new capabilities, experimenting with that in the fleet, revising the doctrine, training the force on that doctrine, and then exercising the capability with the training force, iterating through the final stages of the cycle to both improve the doctrine and TTP as we more fully develop the force in combat applications. So you heard me mention live, virtual, constructive, and I'll try not to be duplicative of Ms. Nashhold's remarks from earlier today. LVC is my boss's number one priority, as you heard, so I'm, of course, very fascinated by it. And I think LVC is a key element of how we must train and must rehearse and must exercise in the future. This last October, our development lab, sort of the heart of IWLVC, if you went, at NIWDC, achieved IOC in October of 2023. By IOC, I mean we were able to integrate across a number of classification levels, to a standard that we had set, as well as have a core backbone of mod and sim and outcome development generation models, I think I would say. So we've reached a time when I believe that's mature enough to really start test driving it, if you will. And I'll talk a little bit about how we might do that in a few minutes. The mod sim part of that is key, and we have this, and I think I said this last year in my remarks as well. Our relationships with partners and stakeholders in LVC is really, in my opinion, the biggest success story of cooperation. NAVWAR, NIWC PAC, NSWC Corona, I'm going to leave folks off the list, but really fantastic relationships with key players in the LVC space. And then our WDC partners at SMIDC and at NAUTIC, who I would say are ahead of us in LVC. But also great partners in advancing our capability as we look at it to necessarily integrating all of that in the future. Those span a range of operational scenarios, the things we will do with our LVC, and also span a range of missions. So for instance, we're going to be including overmatch capability in LVC. We're going to be thinking about electronic warfare in LVC and demonstrating the capabilities that we have afloat, which you see being employed in the Red Sea. So we're bringing a range of missions into the LVC. It won't just be a singular mission focus, if you will, across the IW community. And I'm leaving some missions off there, METOC informed, by the latest meteorology and oceanography models, so that, a plan you might develop over here is well informed by the weather, and then your outcomes are dependent on what you would expect the weather to be from those models. That's just another example. So we remain today on a path to get to 3 integrated warfare team training facilities and fleet concentration areas. So we are on that path today. That's several years away, but I'm confident that we're on the right track and on glide slope to get there. So applications you heard me allude to, beyond just training an individual operator or training a team to work together. Wargaming, TTPs, so as an individual strike group, for instance, as a function of their very specific capabilities, as a function of the units that are in that strike group, being able to come in to our LVC facility and our dev lab and be able to run through scenarios wherein they employ those capabilities and those things, and they get to do it over and over again as they learn how it works, and then they write that down for TTPs specific to their strike group. You get to explore maneuver options because we have the ability to run it in very fast time, so you can do larger force maneuver in concert with IW capability and see how that plays out and learn lessons about how you think about warfighting in the fleet. And then excursions of what we think a particular engagement might look like, and then running excursions of, if we behave this way, how do we believe the outcome behavior is, and so running through those. I'll shift gears here to Task Force Station Hypo. So Task Force Station Hypo is the information warfare community's AI and ML task force. It's the IW Enterprise's Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Task Force, and there are multiple of these across service, maritime service, and communities that collaborate on AI, ML, and data science initiatives. So here I think I'll shift maybe into a little more items of interest for industry as you hear kind of the things we're working on here. So Task Force Station Hypo is most valuable in identifying innovation that's occurring in the fleet, in promoting or incubating those initiatives for wider fleet usage. So with Task Force Station Hypo, we're trying to do 2 things. One is centrally drive the application of AI ML to problems that have been identified in the information warfare community and in partnership with those in other communities, but also allow a place for the deck plate innovation that's happening, and you'll hear me talk in a second about one of those, the deck plate level innovation that is happening, and provide a place where we can then watch it happen, make it extensible to other strike groups who may have the same set of talented humans who understand the same code, Python, for instance, to be able to make those things extensible, and then eventually bring them up for integration with our combat systems. And I mean that in a very broad sense. So just a couple of examples off the bat. One is data science at sea, which I'm sure you've heard about in a couple of other venues, to test onboard analysts' ability to access, exploit, clean, and analyze data, and also develop analytic tools onboard ship to convert files, automate processes, visualize layered data, to provide assessments for the commander's unique information needs. It shows that our unique knowledge of potential adversaries and all source operational intelligence must now include data science skills, especially when supporting maritime operations in denied or degraded communications environments. You hear me talk about skills, and I think we're in pretty early days of innovating from the deck plate up. I mean, I know we've done that for years and years, but in the information warfare community and at the scale using our existing systems, I think we're in early days of how this will play out. So, how do we map skills that these humans have acquired just as a function of their education, and then turn that into a requirement that then we train to have that tide sort of raise all boats moving forward. So one example of their tools, it was a simple tool to automate the creation of multiple map overlays for multiple shipboard systems as geographic reference points change. That sounds pretty basic, but for those who are familiar with the number of shipboard systems that have sort of a map interface, that's actually a pretty big deal and saved a lot of time and energy on board the ship. And kind of a second example here is using data rules automation and machine learning to improve the processes by which we prepare electronic warfare libraries. So we're working deeply with Crane on how we do that. We're partners in other, as Task Force Station Hypo, we're partners in other AI and ML efforts in the Navy and in the DoD. And I'll talk about a couple of them. So Project Hermes, a Dawn Chief Data Officer program, fully integrated into Jupiter, the Dawn Enterprise Data Environment. It was launched in 2020, and Jupiter makes Dawn data widely discoverable, accessible, understandable, and usable across the naval enterprise. Hermes automates data ingestion, therefore enabling broad artificial intelligence, machine learning, and natural language processing capabilities. And so use cases that include providing program and project-specific data analytics and visualizations, aiding watch floor situational awareness, enabling real-time analysis, and correlating data and features utilized in model development of operational risk indicators at the unit level. Project Maven, DoD's probably most visible artificial intelligence tool, designed to process imagery and full motion video from drones and automatically detect potential targets. Maven capabilities, we exercise them in concert with the Army's 18th Airborne Corps and participate both from a WDC to learn new TTPs as well as an AI and ML task force perspective to continue to iterate on that capability. The Naval Information and Innovation Exchange, or NIX is an effort at NPS, the postgraduate school, to build AI competency. NIC's team, student, faculty, and industry partners are poised to accelerate technology adoption through iterative interdisciplinary research cycle by driving ideation and prototyping through testing and evaluation. So this gets back to what I mentioned here with skills and then leveraging our relationship with the Naval Postgraduate School. And then lastly, Task Force Lima, which is fairly new. In August 2023, the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office stood up Task Force Lima, the DoD's task force for generative AI and large language models. It examines generative AI and develops recommendations on how to use them in a responsible manner. So for industry, kind of tied to this are, as new systems and networks are under development, the data must be AI ready. Readable in a structured non-proprietary format. We still have systems that produce text string outputs that must be cleaned and formatted manually to be able to be used in a data science or AI application. We have to own the data. The Department of the Navy has to own the data that we're going to be using for this. And then investing in software and innovating with the software that already exists, that's applied to the hardware that we already have and already exists, I think is also key. So I'll switch to the very end. Looking ahead to the future, you heard me refer to NIWDC growth. We are programmed to grow across the FIDIP on the enlisted sailor, the officer, and the civilian billet side to really grow into the capacity that we need to support the doctrine and training functions that go along with the capability that Navy is delivering to the fleet. NIWDC's going to grow with deliberation. We're being very introspective on where we apply that human talent from the very beginning and then on through the FIDIP. A couple of concentration areas for us in 2023. One is allies and partners. It's not lost on me, and I think it's come out clearly in the last couple of days how much we value our relationships, one, and number two, being able to fight alongside our allies and partners. This year, I'm focusing on the Five Eye. I'm committed to bringing Five Eye partners into our prospective IWC course this spring in May as a start of that effort. And in a similar vein, I now have a foreign disclosure officer on our staff, and so we're taking a lot of existing Navy doctrine and writing it to be releasable. That way we have a common lexicon and a common doctrine starting point from which to grow. I'm also orienting a bit more to the Echelon 2 and Echelon 3 mock levels and the extent that we'll have warfighting systems there. Again, Ms. Nashville talked about the mock TICOM responsibility and kind of where we're going from a mock TICOM perspective, but from a warfighting at the mock perspective, I think we have some work to do there. So I'm going to be orienting a little more on our functions, our IW functions there, the IW systems that are there, and how we employ those in a high-end fight. That's a deep partnership with NIWDC. You heard me mention them. I mean, they are the WDC for the operational level of war. So there's a seam there, and I mean that in a very good way. So I look forward to partnering with Mr. Mike Durkin and the NIWDC on that. And then lastly, I'd say growing data science at sea. You heard me mention it, but I think I have a role through our Task Force Station Hypo to incubate that and provide a space for that. As it stands today, we watch what's happening. We learn from what's happening. We try to tell the story of what's happening. so that others may benefit from it. But I think we have to go a little deeper than that and more formalize that so that these deck plate level sort of bootstrap efforts with data at sea are more fully broadened, if you will, in terms of fleet application, and then we bring them in to train to them and make it a normal part of our training cycle as we touch carrier strike group ARGs and units as they go through the OFRP cycle. Okay, that's it. I wanted to say thanks for your attention. Really appreciate it. I appreciated the opportunity to talk about NIWDC and this team. Hopefully it came out that I'm deeply passionate for the missions and for the humans that do these missions. So thanks for your attention. I'm ready to take any questions you might have. Thanks.
Hi, Mark Pomerleau with Defense Scoop. Regarding the what's going on in the Red Sea, what can you say about what you're learning, and I guess recognizing that it takes a while to formalize doctrine and TTPs, how quickly are you able to internalize what you're learning and get it back out to the fleet to execute any kind of countermeasures or thwart what's being thrown at them out there?
Okay. No, obviously I can't go into great level of detail about that, but I think what I'll say is a couple things. Number one is being able to rapidly understand what has happened, right? To understand the scenario. And then it's not just an information warfare thing, right? Because we are, our kit is but one or two of several that are being brought to bear, in a scenario like that. So collectively seeing what happened and understanding it to a level that we believe we can understand it to, and then understanding that level, and of course more, better, faster there. And I had a conversation with the SMIDIC commander this morning about that, about how we learn faster from that. But we do have a decent level of understanding, even if it's at a rudimentary level, about even some very basic system performance parameters. The doctrine that we're talking about here, doctrine is a pretty broad term, right? And I've used it pretty broadly as I've talked here. But on the one end, you have sort of the massive publications that talk broadly about how we as a Navy are going to fight. And then at the other hand, you have, very narrow documents that narrowly speak to, here's how you employ this system in this situation. Those we're able to turn around within days, because you're able to just tweak what already exists, and that's really what it amounts to. So we're able to turn that around pretty rapidly to the fleet, and it's been learning for us at the headquarters level as well, because while we were able to turn that pretty quickly, I would say we could have been more ready to do that. But I feel that we're very ready now in a repeatable way, to learn day by day from that. I hope that got at it.
And from a repeatable perspective, you see that, as this threat continues, maybe others proliferate, that you can kind of repeat that process and be able to kind of get new tactics and TTPs out to the force in a pretty quick manner, I assume, right?
No, and I'm glad you asked the question, because I think there's potentially two meanings here that I have. One is repeatable in terms of being able to learn and then make that extensible to other threats that may be in the same threat category or class, that may matter in another part of the world. And then repeatable in terms of being ready as a headquarters element, as the Warfighting Development Center, for that to happen on any given day, and then be able to put a team quickly together to quickly be able to partner with, whether it's a systems command or WDC or whoever a stakeholder is, to be able to do that very quickly and then be able to move out. So that's a process piece that I think I own at the headquarters. So that's kind of the two meanings I had.
Hi, Lauren Williams with Defense One. Good to see you again. I wanted to ask you a bit more about developing the data science at sea capability. Could you walk out a little bit more how you want to develop that and how this expertise, how that being distributed to vessels at sea, how that would be used operationally?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and I'll try not to give you the 20-minute answer, which is what I want to give you. But data science at sea is really born of humans with skill sets as a function of their education and training who do something really great with the systems, the networks, the tools that the Navy has already fielded and given them. So they find a new way to maybe take a data set and do something new with it, and they're using a skill set that they've learned that isn't resident because we as a Navy haven't said, all right, every carrier strike group must have 5 Python coders, right? And so being able to then look at that and go, oh, so that human with that skill set was able to do something innovative and creative with a data set that had this outcome that saved a bunch of time or a bunch of energy, or allowed that group to look at the data in a new way that maybe allows us to look with fresh eyes at potential, ways ahead, right? And so that effort is goodness. I think we would all agree that that's a good thing. But then how do we then take that and then extend that to other strike groups or ARGs or units or staffs that maybe don't have that exact same background or skill set, right? I think that as time goes on, we're going to see more in the force that are comfortable, with working with the things that we have given them and being very creative and coming up with new ways to do that. So I think, the few things that we have seen, and I talked about a couple of those examples, I think we're going to see more and more of that. And so what I think about is, as we do see more and more of that, how do I then spread that to others? And so I think that's a process thing. I think I have some articulation to do about requirements, on sort of the training and education, the skill set side. But in the interim, I would like for every carrier strike group or every ARG or every ship to realize the power of what, one sailor did over here with this capability that the Navy's already provided them. Thank you. Is that it? You guys are letting me off easy. The reception started. I know. I get it. All right. Last chance. All right. Thank you all for your time and attention. Really appreciate it. Oh, yeah, one more. Yep.
Oh, okay. I have a follow-up.
Yeah.
Do you know who you want to partner with to kind of expand the data science at sea?
I don't. I'm sharing very nascent thoughts with you,
Yeah.
About where I want to go. I think within the Navy, some of my WDC counterparts are doing this with their mission systems already, I think, to a little better extent. So I think, in the WDC collective, I have some partnerships there. Admiral Small, who you heard from, his team's actually been, please don't take this as a NIWDC thing. This deck plate level stuff done with capabilities that were largely delivered by Naval is what we're talking about. And so Naval and Admiral Small and his team are huge partners as well. And I think our training commands as well. But that's very early thoughts.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. All right, really last chance this time. Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks, Laura.